Yeah, Erev Tov. Good evening, everyone. It's been a while since we've had shiur. I am glad to be back. We are discussing very, very important topics tonight related to the times of Mincha and Arvit. Very relevant topics. Hopefully, we'll get to have some nice, relevant discussions. Be'ezrat Hashem. I need to just do a quick reminder of where we were, what discussion we were in the middle, and where we're going. Okay, so when we started the Mishnah, we started the Perek on Daf Chav Vav Amud Aleph on 26A. We had a Mishnah talking about the Zmanim of Tefillah. We have Machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan of what are the end times of certain tefillot, and some of the start times are included in the discussion as well. So, how are you? Shalom Alechem. So, we're going to do a quick reminder of the times of the Mishnah to give us a running start to talk about Masechet Eduyot, which is where we were left off. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And we had a chart, but I want to just see it in the Mishnah because it's good to see it in the Mishnah. We'll review the chart and then we'll pick up. This, I'm going back. So we already did this already. I'm just going to quickly review the Mishnah on Chav Vav Amud Aleph 26A. If you're looking in the art scroll, it's what, 26A 3? 5. 26A 5. Okay, there's a lot of pages there. The 26A 5, the Mishnah tells us, yeah, there it is. The Mishnah says that Tefillat HaShachar at Chatzot, the morning Tefillah of, we're talking about the Amidah of Shacharit, the end time is Chatzot, which is midday. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ad Arba Shaot, and Rabbi Yehuda disagreed and said, no, it's earlier than midday. It's the fourth hour of the day. And what we explained is that every day has how many hours? 12, okay, 24 total, but the daylight hours is always 12 hours. And so when we talk about hours in our Mishnah, we're not talking about fixed hours of 60 minutes per hour. We're talking about, very good, Shaot Zmaniot, translated as seasonal hours, which it depends on the season and how much sunlight there is. So if you are on a middle spring day where there's an equal amount of day and equal amount of night, what you're going to have is, let's say, sunrise at 6, sunset at 6, a day that's 6 to 6, there's 12 hours, and each hour is 60 minutes. But if sunrise is at 5 and sunset is at 7, so now you really have like 14 hours worth of sunlight, which is not really 14 hours, it's 60 times 14, that's how many minutes there are, and then you got to divide that back into 12. Which means each hour is 70 minutes. That's exactly correct. Because basically, if I say my day starts at 5 and ends at 7, I'm adding on 2 more 60 minutes. So I'm giving you an extra 120 minutes. So if you're dividing that by 12, that means each hour is an extra 10 minutes. Because you have an extra 120 minutes divided by 12, an extra 10 minutes. 5? No. Sorry, what did I say? No. If you start at 5 and end at 7, so you're adding an extra 120 minutes. So that means you're actually adding an extra 10 minutes per hour. Yeah, if you only add, if you sunrise is at 5, but sunset stays at 6, so it's an extra 5 minutes per hour. So essentially what you need to do is you need to calculate the total daylight minutes, sunrise, sunset, divided by 12. That's what we mean by hours. Midday, chatzot, is right in the middle. Okay, just sunrise, sunset, right in the middle. Ad Arba Shaot, 4 hours, means you need to calculate how much each of these seasonal hours are, and 4 of them. And then the discussion of the Gemara is that the start of the 4th hour, or is that the end of the 4th hour? When you say 4 hours, does that mean really after, if you're talking about a day from 6 to 6, does that mean like 6, 7, 8 is 3 hours? So starting 9 o'clock, you're done? Or do you also include from 9 to 10 as your 4th hour? That's the discussion we're having in the Gemara. When you say ad, does that mean, is that until and including, or until and not including? Okay? What was the example that I gave? I gave a good example. I just forgot what it was. It was a month ago. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, this came up as well. Similar concept where you say waiting 6 hours for meat. So some people they say if I have to wait 6 hours, that means I have to wait 5 hours and 30 seconds. Okay, that's 6 hours. Okay, so precise for something that the concept of saying into the fifth hour is to say like okay you're rounding, but like when you're that precise that it's like 5 hours and 4 seconds. I'm in. Okay, so it's like obviously that's not the idea. Just to explain, the Rambam does say you need to wait kimosha shaot, which means approximately 6 hours. So what's approximately 6 hours? The times of the Rambam, 5.5 hours can probably, you know, pass muster. But no. So that's actually a good point. When it comes to okay, very good point. Um, okay, this is a whole different discussion. We're not gonna get there. We're not gonna go there. There's a good. This is a discussion of waiting between meat and dairy. It's a whole Masechet Chulin. We're not gonna go there. But yeah, okay, that's a concept. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Very good. Very good. All right. I'll tell you what this is.
Your second year of life.
Mr. Zabalani, they tell you that like haircuts are free for your children until age 5. Hold on a second. I have a 5-year-old. You have a 5-year-old? Okay. So, but let's imagine you did. Okay. So now you're gonna start saying, well, okay, hold on a second. Haircuts are free for up until age 5. So my child is 5. Now your child is actually, if your child turned 5, but tomorrow is 5 in a day, or 5 in a month, or 5 and 11 months, or 5, 11 months and 29 days, are these the same thing? No, there's differences. So would you say up until 5, but not including 5, or does it mean until and including that 5th year? Or really, that would be considered the 6th year. So it's just a matter of what do you mean when you use the word until. Rabbi Yehuda tells us you could pray shacharit until the 4th hour. Does that mean until the start of the 4th hour, or until the end of the 4th hour? Okay, that's what our Gemara is going to discuss. But before we jump back to the Gemara, I need you to see the second line of the Mishnah because that's going to be relevant for tonight. The end time of shacharit is either midday according to Rabbanan, or the end of 4th hour according to Rabbi Yehuda. Tefilat HaMincha ad ha'erev. Tefilat HaMincha is until sunset, according to the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad Plag HaMincha. Rabbi Yehuda tells us until Plag HaMincha, which what we say is there's a halfway mark between Mincha Ketana and sunset, which is essentially an hour and a quarter before the end of the day, or put another way, 10 hours and 3/4 into the day. If I tell you 10.75 into the day or 1.25 before the end of the day, you're talking about the same thing. Look at this chart that we made. It's not the best chart, but it does the job. When is the latest time for shacharit? Either at chatzot or Rabbi Yehuda says 4 hours. When is the latest time for mincha? It's either at erev, which we'll say means sunset, it's machloket, or plag mincha, which means 10.75 hours into the day. Okay, that's the last time to pray mincha. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't have mincha right before sunset. You need to give yourself an hour and a quarter before sunset in order to pray mincha. Okay, now the whole discussion we wanted to ask is when Rabbi Yehuda says until the 4th hour. Does that mean until the start of the 4th hour, until the end of the 4th hour? We had this discussion in the Gemara, and now let's jump back to our Gemara. I'll take us back to. Let's go back to this. It's from Amar of Nachman Af Anan Nami Tanina on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph 27A, and we already did this, but we'll do it just to give ourselves a running start. 27A. Rama said 2, so I'm going to go with 2. Af Anan Nami Tanina is right before 2. It's 27A1, that last paragraph. So we're almost there, Ram. 27A1, that last paragraph. Amar Rav Nachman, Af Anan Nami Tanina. The Gemara concluded that Rabbi Yehuda means until and including ad ve'ad bichlal, which means until the end of the 4th hour. And Rav Nachman says, you know what? I have a proof from another Mishnah that's explaining this. And what is that Mishnah? That Mishnah is from Masechet Eduyot. What is Masechet Eduyot? Does anyone remember? Can anyone tell me what is Masechet Eduyot? Go ahead. Very good. We're going to learn this up on the next daf. There was one day where they invited different rabbanim into the Bet Midrash in Yavne, where beforehand they made admission very hard, and then these ticket guys found some sort of a hack, and they all of a sudden they started replicating tickets. Everyone was able to get into the U.S. I mean they were all able to come into the Bet Midrash. They all had access to it. They all come in. And then, since everyone was there, they had that opportunity to ask different questions of, hey, what did you learn from your rabbi? What did you learn from your rabbi? And everyone came with testimonies of what they saw, what they experienced. That's why it's called Masechet Eduyot. Eduyot is like an edut, a testimony. And I mentioned this to you last time, that Masechet Eduyot, the concepts are completely unrelated, because it's just different people saying what they learned from their rabbis, and it's perfect for ADD, for someone who has ADHD. Why? Because you get to learn all of halachot just depending on what they heard from their rabbi. Imagine you have a book of what you heard from your rabbi, without any focus or logic. So there was one Mishnah that gave us 5 items, and the fifth item proves to us that Rabbi Yehuda can say you could pray shacharit until and including the 4th hour, until the end of the 4th hour. So for our purposes, that's enough that we need to know from this Mishnah. But there are 4 other concepts. We explained this last time. I'll do it again, just to give ourselves a running start. Okay? Af anan nami tanina. We have a proof from a Mishnah, Masechet Eduyot, that Rabbi Yehuda, when he tells us you could pray at Shacharit until the 4th hour, it means until and including. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No. Masechet Eduyot was taught on that one day that the Beit Midrash was open, and it was just from that one day of Tanaim on that day. And we're going to learn the story on the next daf. The next daf is going to tell us more about the story. What were the 5 things? Rabbi Yehuda, sorry, someone has a question? Okay, Rabbi Yehuda ben Reva he'id chamishat devarim. Rabbi Yehuda ben Reva, when it was his turn to get the mic, he's like, I want to tell you guys 5 testimonies. Number 1, shemema'anin et haketana, that you encourage the young orphaned girl to annul her marriage. And I explained this last time, I'll explain it again. According to the Torah, a woman, once she reaches the age of adulthood, which is bat mitzvah, once she reaches that point, it's really 12 and a half, then she's allowed to get married on her own. She's an adult, she gets to decide, she does not need parental consent. I think here in the States, I think you need to be at least age 18. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm sure there's some states in this country that is less than that. But you need to have parental consent before age 18. If a guy is going and dating a high school girl, which we probably know a few of those, they're dating a high school girl, she wants to get married when she's 17, you need parental consent. But after 18, you're an adult. Okay, so that's the halacha talks about an adult can get married on her own. Less than that is her father. Now, what happens about a minor girl who is less than 12 years old, who the situation is they want her to get married, but her dad is dead. So what can she do? She can't get married for herself because she's too young. And she can't get her father's consent because she doesn't have a father. So what halacha says is that there is a concept where the mother and or her older brother can be the one to give consent for her to get married. But this is only a rabbinic enactment, which means the rabbis came and said, in the absence of her father, this is an orphan girl. And when she's at this age, now you might say, why would this girl want to be getting married? The answer is, ask your grandmothers. Like what would happen in Iran? There were situations in which there would be, what is it? 12. Yeah, you could be 12. Let's just say it's 11 years old. There's a girl that's 11 years old, and they're getting chastagars from the next door neighbors that you don't want your child to marry. So you say, sorry, this child's hand is already married to the first cousin, right? Which is probably the history of this room, right? Or there's many people like this. I know my grandmother and my grandfather were first cousins. And my grandmother, the way my mom told me, she got engaged, I think engaged at age 12. Maybe engaged at 9 and married at 12. But the concept is not such a foreign concept. Today it is, but for our culture, it's not. So this is what happened in the times of the Gemara as well. So what would you do? If the father was alive, the father could give consent for the marriage. If the father was not alive, the mother or the brother can do it, but that's only a rabbinic marriage. And since it's only a rabbinic marriage, guess what? She has the option before the age of 12 to decide, I want to go back on this. So she could get married at 8 years old from her mom's consent. And then at age 11, she could say, I don't like this guy. And she doesn't need to get a divorce. It's just walks away, nullified. Okay. Now, now you understand the tools, and here's the situation that's going to happen. Here's the situation. Completely unrelated, there's a concept called yibum. Yibum is when there is two brothers. Okay, one of them gets married, and he gets married with his wife, and then he passes away tragically without having children. So the Torah says is this guy, this man who died young without any children, and he has a widowed wife, his brother should step in and marry her and have a child, and the first child should almost be like the dead brother's child. Okay? This is what the Torah asks us to do. It's this week's parasha, no? It's this week's parasha, Parasha Ki Tetzeh. I'm pretty sure it's the end of this week's parasha, where it says how, someone check. Tomer, you got this. ChatGPT. It's the end of this week's parasha. So what happens is that the brother steps in to marry his dead brother's widowed wife. Now, there are exceptions where this can't work. For example, let's say two brothers married two sisters. Is that allowed? Can two brothers marry two sisters? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, what happens if two brothers, Reuven, Shimon, they're brothers, they go marry two sisters, Rachel and Leah, and Reuven marries Rachel, Shimon marries Leah, and then Reuven dies. So without children. So since Reuven died without children, so Shimon should marry his dead brother's widow, but he can't. It is, right? This week's parasha. Good. But he can't marry his dead brother's widow. Why? Because he can't marry two sisters. Right? It happens to be Rachel and Leah. Yaakov actually married them, but that's against the Torah. A person is not allowed to marry two sisters. Okay? So now here's the complication. You ready? Reuven married Rachel from the Torah. Reuven is older than Bar Mitzvah. Rachel is older than Bar Mitzvah. They're 15 years old. They're 18 years old. They get married, and that's all good. Shimon married Leah when she was only 10 years old. So Shimon's marriage to Leah is only a rabbinic marriage. Why? Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. The dad was dead. So since Leah's dad was dead, the mom gave Leah, who was younger than 12 years old. So that is a rabbinic marriage. So you have Reuven marrying Rachel with a Torah marriage. Then the younger Shimon married the younger sister Leah when she was orphaned from her dad. So her brother or her mother had to give her hand in marriage. And then what happens? Rachel dies. So now Shimon is in this situation. Shimon says, can I go marry Leah to fulfill the mitzvah of Yibum? The answer is, well, I'm actively married to Rachel, her sister. Okay? But the marriage that he has with Rachel is only a rabbinic marriage. And if she decides she wants out, she could walk away. Right? So here's what the Mishnah tells us here. Rabbi Yehuda tells us, Shemima'anin et haketana. They go to that younger girl and they say, you annul this marriage. Because your marriage is not a real Torah marriage. It's only a rabbinic marriage. And you have a Torah obligation to marry your husband has a Torah obligation to marry his dead brother's widow. That takes precedence. So you should get annulled. B'ezras Hashem, you'll find your own match. But right now, he needs to go to marry your older sister. So you have to refuse this marriage. Okay? The point is that this is what they advised. And Rabbi Yehuda is giving an edut. That's why it's an eduyot. He's saying, I was involved with this situation. And this is what they did. They told her, annul the marriage, and she did, and he went and he married the older sister. Okay? So that's case number one. Very unrelated to anything, but that's Masechet Eduyot. Number two, Shemesi'in et ha'isha al pi ed echad, that a woman is allowed to remarry with the testimony of only one man saying that her husband is dead. I'll give you another, here's an explanation. We have this, it's in the last week's parasha. It's all of these parashot that says that al pi shnaim edim yumat hamet lo yamut al pi ed echad. The Torah says, I'm misquoting it, but essentially the Torah says when there's going to be testimony for something, there has to be two witnesses. You need to have at least 2 or 3 witnesses, okay? Man and woman are married. Man and woman are married. Husband disappears. Can she go remarry? Can she go and and get married to another guy? No. Okay, very good. The answer is no, she cannot because she's married. All right, but her husband's gone. Okay, but who knows where he is? Maybe he works for the Mossad and he's in Syria right now, and he's going to come back, or he's in Iran and he's going to come back in 10 years from now. In 5 years from now, he's going to come. You can't, just because you don't know where he is, that doesn't mean you could assume something that he's no longer with us. So what happens if there's 2 witnesses that saw he died? And the 2 witnesses come and say, he's dead. Can't she remarry?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Why? Because you have 2 witnesses. It's fully legit. She's allowed to remarry. Now here's what he's teaching us in our Mishnah. That when it comes to a situation where there is 1 witness that comes and says, Shalom Edat, this guy died, you have 1 witness. So technically it's not enough. She's not allowed to remarry. But here's the problem. The problem is you can't manufacture a witness. So this woman, for the rest of her life, as Josh said, is going to be an aguna, which means she's going to be widowed, can never remarry for the rest of her life. And Chachamim said, we have 1 witness, 1 credible witness, that's telling us that she saw the husband died. That's enough. When it comes to agunot, when it comes to helping a woman to remarry, even 1 witness saying that her husband is dead is sufficient. Okay, so that's a tremendous leniency that he gives us in this Mishnah. Yes. Okay, excellent question, Dylan. So Dylan's saying, hold on a second. You're essentially just getting rid of the law of the Torah. The Torah says you need 2 witnesses. So the rabbis come and say 1 is enough. What do you mean 1 is enough? You need 2. Okay. The answer is they only allow it in this unique situation because they have a technical loophole. Okay, you want to hear about it? It's completely irrelevant for us. This has nothing to do with anything. But we'll do it anyway. Chachamim tell us that Afkeinu Rabbanan Kiddushin Mineh. The rabbis have the authority. It's tremendous. This tool is such an important tool. I have so many stories to share about this tool. The rabbis have the authority that whenever a man gives a ring to a woman, what does he say? Hari'at mekudeshet li b'tavat zo kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, according to the law of Moshe and Israel, which means I'm doing this under the authority of the rabbis. And that means the courts and the rabbis, the Bedin, has the authority to say that marriage was not valid. They have the authority to do that. Okay? That's because Kiddushin is done through the Bedin. It's done through this process of the Rabbanan. And then the rabbis can come say, to your point, can the rabbis come and say, we allow you to accept only 1 witness? They can't do that. But you know what they can do? The rabbis can come and say, we go retroactively and annul your Kiddushin and say you were never married. Because the marriage is done under the authority and the jurisdiction of the rabbis. Kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, according to the rabbis. So the rabbis come and say, you were never married. Boom. And they are retroactively getting rid of that Kiddushin to say there was never any marriage. So can rabbis come and now say, hey, I know the Torah says I only want 2 witnesses, but 1 guy saw him die, so I want to accept 1 witness to say that he's dead? That you can't do. But you know what you can say? I'm going to use that 1 witness to come and say she was never married to him to begin with. And then she could go marry whoever she wants. And that's the tool, the mechanism the rabbis use to help an aguna. They use this leniency in this case specifically because they want to help this widowed woman. They don't do this for everything. There are other situations where Ed Echad is Ne'eman, 1 witness is accepted. I'll give you another example that's brought up in the Gemara Masechet Gittin. Ed Echad Ne'eman Me'isurin. Let's say, for example, you're invited to someone's home for Shabbat. and then you go to the kitchen, and there's a woman there that says all the food here is kosher. You say, how do you know? Because I went and I bought it from the supermarket. But you're only one witness. I don't know that it's kosher. You're only one witness. Chachamim will say, look, there are certain things that we accept one witness for. If you have one mashkiach in the kitchen, it's sufficient. If you have one person in your kitchen, when it comes to certain things of whether this is kosher food or not, one witness is a lot. So the Gemara speaks about this, how there are certain times where we accept one witness. But in general, we need two witnesses, and when there's exceptions, there has to be a reason behind that exception. Okay? Good? That was unrelated. That was tangential item number 2. Tangential item number 3 in our Mishnah. Al tarnegol sheniskal b'Yerushalayim al she'haraget hanefesh. There was a situation where in Yerushalayim there was a crazy rooster on the loose. Here in Great Neck, we started off with raccoons. Now we've been promoted to coyotes. You guys have seen these coyotes? They're just running around coyotes in the middle of Steamboat Road. Not scared of anything. You haven't seen it? The first, I thought it was a fox also. No, no. These are coyotes. They're much bigger. Yeah, they could eat you, but other than that, it's not so dangerous. No. Apparently, if you see one, just start screaming and yelling, and they're not interested in altercations with humans. They just want food. So they're not gonna come. But I've seen them around. I've seen them. The first time I saw it, I was gonna call 911, and I was gonna call animal services. I didn't even know who to call. Who are you supposed to call? Who am I supposed to call? I have no idea who I was gonna call. I'm just calling, and then I found out it's all over Great Neck. Apparently, they're all over. I see them on Steamboat Road. Friday nights for something they like Kabbalat Shabbat. There's something about the days because like Friday nights when I'm coming home from Bet Knesset, I see it in the same spot every single week. It's just right around there. It smells the choresh, then it comes out to Steamboat Road. Okay, why is it? Okay, so what happens is in Yerushalayim they had roosters, and there was a time when a rooster Shalon Eda killed a baby. There's a soft part. The baby's head is very, very soft. It isn't fully formed yet. This rooster was crazy, went on the loose, pecked the baby in the head and killed it. So what they did is that the Chachamim took this rooster and they executed it. And I think this is an American law also. I remember reading something that there was a dog that viciously attacked some child, and they put it to sleep. This is what happens. So this is what the Mishnah tells us. There was a rooster that killed a baby, and they executed it. Why is this such a big deal? Because the Torah speaks about situations where there's an ox that gores a person, but it doesn't tell us about other animals. So here, there's a situation. Rabbi Yehuda is telling us, I was in a situation, I saw this is what they did. Okay? That's item number 3. Item number 4, there is a rule that they would pour wine on the Mizbeach. And when they would pour wine on the Mizbeach, it would have to be aged wine, not grape juice. You can't just take grapes and pour it and squeeze it. It has to be somewhat aged in the barrel. How long? Rabbi Yehuda tells us 40 days is enough. Once it's 40 days, it ferments and changes from grape juice to wine. Okay? That's rule number 4 that Rabbi Yehuda taught us. And number 5, the korban of the morning was brought in that 4th hour. And therefore, since Rabbi Yehuda is bringing us as a proof that the korban of shacharit was brought in that 4th hour, and we know that Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah tells us you could pray shacharit until the 4th hour, it wouldn't make sense for him to say at the start of the 4th hour if we know for a fact that in that 4th hour it could be brought. So this is a proof that when Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah says shacharit is until the 4th hour, he means until and including the 4th hour. As Rabbi Yehuda tells us that they would bring korbanot until and including that 4th hour. And that's how we want to line it up, that we know that Rabbi Yehuda holds until and including the 4th hour for shacharit, because Rabbi Yehuda in Masechet Eduyot tells us that they would bring the korban of shacharit within that 4th hour. Good? Shema mina ad b'chlal. Shema mina. So we learn from here that it's until and including. Okay. Now, look what happens. Let's go back to our Mishnah. Okay, look at the board. Look at the board. What is the latest time for shacharit? It's either until chatzot or until the end of the 4th hour, right? Chachamim say until the end of the 6th hour. Rabbi Yehuda says until the end of the 4th hour. What should the halacha be? Based on rules that you know, what do you think the law should be? What should be the latest time for shacharit? What do you think?
I think it's the 4th hour.
So Nick says end of the 4th hour. Okay. Okay, so maybe Shlomo is saying maybe it's really until the end of the 6th hour, but let's just be safe and go until the end of the 4th hour so everyone is happy. In general, when you have a machloket between Tana Kama over here, I'll actually say is called the Rabbanan, which means the majority opinion. In general, when you have a majority opinion versus a minority opinion, the law is going to be like the majority opinion. So really, based on what we would assume, you have until the end of the 6th hour to pray shacharit. But now our Gemara wants to say, but hold on a second. We have additional evidence in this case that tells us the halacha is actually like Rabbi Yehuda. What's the additional evidence? The additional evidence is this Mishnah Masechet Eduyot. Because we had this whole thing in Masechet Eduyot that he says, I have proof that the korban of shacharit is brought within that 4th hour. So if you have until the end of the 6th hour, what kind of proof is this? Until the end of the 4th hour. Okay, 4th hour, 5th hour, 6th hour. But the fact that they're saying like, no, like that's the last time you could bring it is until the end of the 4th hour. And that's in Masechet Eduyot. So you have a testimony that that's the law. And now, even though in general you would say the rule is like the majority, in this case, Masechet Eduyot, it's very powerful. So we're going to lean towards saying actually the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Now let's go ahead and see that in the Gemara. Okay, now we're continuing about Tamid Shel Shachar. Amar Rav Kahana. You guys are with me? Amar Rav Kahana. It's on 27A2. Amar Rav Kahana. It's the paragraph on the left. Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Ho'il utnan bebechirata kavate. Since it was taught in the preferred tractate, Masechet Eduyot is known as the Bechirata, is the preferred one, is the highest Masechet. Why? Because it's testimonies of things that actually happened. It's not just discussions. It's like, here are things that actually occurred. That you could have discussions from here until the morning, but if you see there's a situation that this is what the law was, if you see that there's a situation where discussion was made clearly, and this is what they concluded, so that's a very powerful source. Masechet Eduyot is very powerful for that reason. So says Rav Kahana that our halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, since we learned in Masechet Eduyot like him, and in fact this is going to be the law according to Shulchan Aruch. I hope to cover a little bit more, and then we're going to jump to Shulchan Aruch, and we'll see. It's the end of the 4th hour is the time for shacharit. Okay? If you miss it though, as Shlomo said, you really can go until midday. There are times where you could go until midday. Why? It's machloket. Okay, let's keep going. Our Mishnah told us, this Mishnah, Masechet Eduyot, tells us that the korban of shachar could be brought until the 4th hour. Man tana lahai tanan. Here's what we want to know. There is a Mishnah, and this Mishnah, this is a Braita, or it's a Mishnah, that we're about to quote. We want to know, who is the author of this? Is it Rabbi Yehuda, or is it the Chachamim? Okay? What does this have to do with? Tonight we're on tangent mode. This has to do with the man in the desert. What happened with the man in the desert? Does anyone know how often the man would fall? Once a day. When in the day? Morning time. The Torah tells us, baboker, baboker. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and read the pasuk. So here's the pasuk. It says, every morning they would go collect, so they gathered it in the morning. What does in the morning mean? Every morning. So they would collect it every morning. Ish kafi achlo, each according to what he needed for himself and his family. V'cham hashemesh, and when the sun grew hot, v'namas, it would melt. So this line is telling us that they would collect it every morning. Every morning they would collect it, and then the sun would become hot, and it would melt. So there would be no leftovers. It would all melt away. Okay? Let's see what the Braita is going to tell. This Mishnah is going to have this discussion of what time would it melt? Okay, so Itai just says noon. Why do you say noon? Okay, well, the highest point of the sun, the heat of the day is noon. So you're saying it would melt at noon. Very good. Would anyone venture to guess something else when it would melt? What? 4 hours. Why do you say that? Because you're such a Tamid Chacham that like the answers just pour out of you. You don't even need a reason for it. You just pick a number and that's the number. It's just I don't know how that happened. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara tells us. So the Mishnah says, Man Tana, who is the author of this Mishnah of V'cham Hashemesh v'namas? The sun heats and it melts. Be'arba shaot, 4 hours. So someone says 4 hours. We want to know who is that. So before we say that, the Gemara asks, Ata Omer. Sorry, the Braita continues. Ata Omer be'arba shaot. You're saying it's 4 hours. Oh, eno ela b'shesh shaot. Maybe it's 6 hours. Okay. Also, what Itai said. The guy is going to say, hold on a second. There's two phrases in the Torah. There's one phrase that says, V'cham hashemesh v'namas, which means the sun becomes hot and melts the man. But there's another phrase in the Torah that says, Kechom hayom, when the day becomes hot, the heat of the day. And it tells us that by Avraham Avinu, when he got a Brit Milah, he's hanging out, Kechom hayom, and then the visitors come, the angels come, they come to visit him, Kechom hayom. So, what's the difference between the sun getting hot, Cham HaShemesh, and Kechom Hayom, and the day getting hot? So here's the distinction. The distinction is, there's a point in time that the sun is hot while the shade is still cool, but then there's a point where the day is hot no matter where you are, even if you're in the shade, okay? So when you say the sun is hot, that's an earlier time period that when you're under the sun, you're hot, but it's still cool in some areas. Under shade, it's still cool. Because the sun is hot, but not the whole day. Whereas Kechom Hayom, where the day is hot, that means the heat of the day, even if you're not under the sun, even if you're under the shade, you're going to be very hot. So that's what it's going to say. When it says Kechom Hayom, the heat of the day, Hareshesh Shaot Amur, that is in the middle of the day. That is after 6 hours. The hottest point of the day is when the sun is right over top. There is no shade. It's right on top. The whole day is hot. Okay, 12 o'clock noon. 12 noon. So when is the time when it's only the sun that's hot and the man melts? 4 hours. So the Gemara wants to say that the man is melting at 4 hours, not at 12, because meaning not at the end of 6, because that's the heat of the day. But this is the heat of the sun, which is the 4th hour, 4 hours. So the Gemara first wants to say, which opinion is this? Is this Rabbi Yehuda, or is this Chachamim? Now keep in mind, Mani, who is it? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbanan. It's not Rabbi Yehuda, it's not the rabbis. Why? Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, ad arba shaot namit safrahu. Because until the end of the 4th hour, it's still daytime. Now remember, what is the phrase of the pasuk? It says, they would collect in the morning, and then it gets hot, the sun gets hot and it melts. Which seems to imply this happened in the 4th hour. The 4th hour is no longer morning. Because they're collecting in the morning. But it melts in the 4th hour, which means the 4th hour is no longer morning. But Rabbi Yehuda is telling us you could pray Tamid Shel Shachar in the 4th hour. So it is morning. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, morning extends until the end of the 4th hour. But this Tana is telling us that the man starts melting at the beginning of the 4th hour. So it can't be Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbanan, and maybe you'll tell me it's the rabbis. Ad chatzot nami safrahu. No, the rabbis will tell you that it's morning until midday. And here this Tana is telling us it's morning up until the end of the 3rd hour, start of the 4th hour. So which one is it? The Gemara says, Ibait ema Rabbi Yehuda, v'ibait ema Rabbanan. It could be both of them. Both of them fit that our Mishnah that tells us that the man melted at the start of the 4th hour, it could fit with either Rabbi Yehuda or rabbis. How? If you want to tell me it's the rabbis, here, what did the pasuk say? Amar kra baboker baboker. Remember how it says they would collect baboker baboker? So what it's saying is chalkehu l'shnei bekarim. There's two stages. How do they translate it? Divide the morning into 2 mornings. So what it's saying is baboker baboker. There's really 2 stages of the morning, and they would collect it in the first stage, and it would melt during the second stage. So when it says that they would collect in the morning, it's telling you they would collect in the first morning, and that second morning or the second half of the morning is when it would melt. So it fits with the rabbis, because even though the rabbis will say the first 6 hours is day, there's two stages of that. The first stage was collecting time, the second stage was melting time, but they're both morning. Okay? That's how it fits with the rabbis. And if you want to tell me it could be Rabbi Yehuda, it still works. Hi boker yetira. Why does it say baboker? In the morning, Lahaktim lo sha'a achat, to make it an hour earlier, as if to say the morning is until the end of the 4th hour. But they would have to collect baboker early morning, like an hour before the morning even ended. They had to collect. But why? Because at the start of the 4th hour it starts melting. That's not to say that the start of that until the end of the 4th hour is not morning. But baboker. You could translate that as every morning, or baboker, you could translate that as early morning, which means they had to collect it by the end of the 3rd hour, even though it was still morning, but that's early morning. And then for that 4th hour, it would start to melt. Okay? However that is. The Gemara now is going to talk through what I just said. My mashma, how is this implied that this is talking about 4 hours? Amar Ravacha bar Yaakov, Amar Kraz, the pasuk says, V'cham hashemesh v'namas. The sun is hot and melts the man. Ezohi sha'asha shemesh cham ve'atzel tzonen. What is the right time period that the sun is hot, but the shade is cool? Leveomer ba'arba shaot. The start of the 4th hour. So what you're really doing is you're saying the first 3 hours of the day, even being under the sun, isn't hot. Okay? The first 3 hours of the day. Let me ask you guys. You go on vacation. You want to go to the beach. Okay, what happens from 6 to 9? Is it hot? It's not. You're not burning hot. What happens from 9 to 12? It starts getting hot. But if you have that umbrella, you're chill. Starting at 12, now it starts getting the heat of the day. That even under that umbrella, you're suffocating. Right? It's getting very, depending on how hot it is. It's stages. That's what you're saying here. That what's the time period that the sun is hot but not the shade? So that's that's the start of the 4th hour, and that's how they learned. At that point, the man started to melt. So if you're ever in the desert and we have no food, and Ribono Shel Olam wants us to have man falling from the sky, what you learn from here is before 9 a.m. get out there and go get you before the end of the 3rd hour. Go get your man, because starting at the 4th hour, even though you could pray shacharit, the man is melting. That's what we're learning. Even though it's still morning, but you got to get the man baboker, early morning. So go get your man and then go pray shacharit in that last hour, or whatever. Do whatever time you want. Just that's what we're learning here. Okay? Good? We have one very important other discussion for tonight that we have to cover, and then we'll do Shulchan Aruch. Let me ask you a question. Look at the screen again. For shacharit, who did we say the halacha is like? Rabbi Yehuda. Why? What did Rav Kana tell us? Yes, because the Masechet Eduyot is taught like him. Okay? Now here's my question. Let's move on to the next prayer. Mincha. What's the last time to pray Mincha? Machloket. What's the answer? According to rabbis, it's sunset. That's the last time to pray Mincha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's until Plag HaMincha, which is an hour and a quarter before sunset. So, who's halacha like? So typically, as I said, there's a bias that you hold like the rabbis. You hold like the majority opinion. When it comes to shacharit, we don't hold like the majority opinion. We hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Do you say that now that means that for when it comes to Zmanim of Tefillah, Rabbi Yehuda is your man? And that means you got to go like this? Everything is like him? Why? Because like you're not going to start chopping things up? Or do you say you're going to chop things up? You hold like him for shacharit, but not by mincha? By the way, when do you guys pray mincha until? Do you pray until sunset, or do you pray until Plag HaMincha, which is an hour and a quarter before sunset? What do you do? Okay. So
Winter until sunset.
okay, very good. So you guys are familiar with this idea that usually there's Mincha, Arvit, Minyanim. Usually they 10 minutes before sunset during the winter. Whatever time sunset is, 15 minutes before sunset, that's what Mincha is. Why? So you pray Mincha right before sunset and then you pray Arvit after sunset. Okay? But then there are certain times of the year, like the summertime. Sunset is at 8:30, but what time is Mincha? 7 o'clock. All summer long. All summer long, it's going to be 7 o'clock. So what exactly is happening with Plag HaMincha? How is this all lining up? We are now going to learn this very important discussion. Are you ready? Very famous Gemara, very important for Gabayim. We have the Gabay Harashi of Arvit over here, and of Givat Shmuel. We have Mr. Hakimian and Mr. Hakimian. Mr. Hakimian and Hakimian, we are going to learn important laws about the end time of Mincha and the start time of Arvit. Critical for every Gabay to know these halachot. Are you ready? Here we go. Tefilat Mincha ad ha'erev. Rabbanan say the end time for Mincha is until the evening, and Rabbi Yehuda tells us until Plag HaMincha. Amar le Rav Chasda Rav Yitzchak. Rav Chasda asks a question from Rav Yitzchak. Rav Chasda says, Hatam, when it came to Shacharit, Amar Rav Kana lachak Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Kana says the law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Since we had an explicit Mishnah in Masechet Eduyot that says they would bring the korban in the 4th hour, that's like Rabbi Yehuda. So Rav Chasda asks his rabbi Rabbi Yitzchak, you know Rav Kahana said that the law is like Rabbi Yehuda by Shacharit? Hachamai, what about by Mincha? Do you say that the law is also like him for Mincha or not? What was his answer? Ishtik v'lo amar le v'lo midi. He didn't answer. Javav shnadot. What does that mean? Rav Chasda asked Rabbi Yitzchak and he didn't answer. So Amar Rav Chasda says, fine, you're leaving me on my own. So now I have to go do my own research. I asked you a question, you're not giving me an answer, so I'll go look it up myself. Nechzi anan. Let's try to figure this out. And as he does some research, he says, Midirav mitzaleh shel Shabbat be'erev Shabbat mi'bod yom shema mina lachak Rabbi Yehuda. You know what he realized? He realized that Rav, summertime, in his Kanisa, you know what he does? Mincha all year round, or during the summertime rather, 6:45. They have a 6:30 minyan, Fridays, in Rav's Kanisa, in Rav's Bet Knesset. So what does Rav Chisda say? So hold on a second. If sunset is at 6:30, sunset is at 8:30, right? Sunset is at 8:30, but Rav is praying Mincha on Fridays at 6:30. He's praying Arvit. He does Lachad Odi at 7 o'clock, and sunset is at 8:30. What does that mean? He's doing. That means he's praying Arvit before sunset. If he holds like the rabbis, he can only pray Arvit after sunset. But he's praying Arvit before sunset, which means he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. So this is he asked his rabbi Rabbi Yitzchak a question, Rabbi Yitzchak didn't answer him. So what did he do? He went to KennySunnews.com and he went and he saw 54 minchas at 6:30, but sunset's at 8:30. So that means they're going to pray Arvit before sunset, which means you must be holding like Rabbi Yehuda. Otherwise, you can't pray Arvit until after sunset. Make sense? You see how he got his proof? So one more time. Since Rav is praying Shabbat, meaning Friday night tefillot of Arvit, be'erev Shabbat mi'bod yom, on Fridays while it's still daytime, it must be he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. That's why he's praying Arvit before sunset. Yes? 10 3/4 for the end of Mincha and the start of Arvit. So you're allowed to start praying Arvit at Plag HaMincha. Whereas according to the Rabbanan, Mincha goes until sunset and Arvit only starts at sunset. So if you're praying Arvit before sunset, you're not holding like the rabbis, you're holding like Rabbi Yehuda. Shema mina lachak Rabbi Yehuda. Adarabba, the Gemara says, hold on a second, time out. You only looked at one minyan, but there's others, Midirav Huna, Rabbanan, Rav Huna, and other rabbis, Lo havu mitzalu ad urta. They never had an early minyan, even though people were complaining. And the boards were saying our kids want to go to sleep. And all of the people were saying it's way too late. We can't stay up. You're not going to get a minyan. The rabbi said, we don't care. We're not going to pray early. Arvit of Friday has to be after sunset. They made such a big stink about it. All of these people came and they tried to, they did a GoFundMe campaign, did a petition. No one cared. The rabbi said, hello, in our minyan over here, we pray Arvit of Friday nights after sunset. So why were they being so difficult about it? Then clearly they wanted to pray Arvit after sunset, which means those rabbis, Rav Huna and the other rabbis, they didn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda, they hold like the Rabbanan. So here's what we said. Rav Chasda asked his Rabbi Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak didn't answer it. He tried to figure it out, and it's like some minyanim do this, but some minyanim do that. So what did he do? The Gemara is going to give us an answer here that is very rare. Are you ready? One of the rarest answers. Hashta. Now, since we don't have a halacha, neither like Rabbi Yehuda or like the rabbis, because he asked the rabbi, didn't give him an answer. You see what other people do, and it's saying different actions. Ready for the kicker? Da'avad kemar avad, v'da'avad kemar avad. If you follow this one, it's fine, and if you follow that one, it's fine. You can follow whichever one you want. Unbelievable! The Gemara. What? Opposite of machloket. Opposite of the machloket. We have a machloket in the Mishnah. Who do you hold like? The rabbi says a manshit. Like, well, whatever. It's like, what kind of an answer is that? The answer is either way is fine. Otherwise, he wouldn't have just kept silent. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to find these two things. So now what we learn is it's okay to follow whichever one you want. Logically, now we have to talk about this. Like, hold on a second. We never do this type of thing. Why don't you say be strict? Why do you say you're not sure, so let's be strict? Why do you say we're not sure, so do whatever you want? Can someone tell me why you can't be strict in this case? And you have to really think this through. Why can't you be strict?
Rabbi, can you show the chart again?
Yeah, let me show you a chart. Good idea. Okay, let's pull up myzemanim.com. Wait, hold on. Which chart? My Excel chart?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to do something more fun, but fine. We'll do the Excel chart.
Oh, one more time. We're only talking about Arvit right now.
Okay, so here's what's happening. You know what?
Got it.
I'm trying to think through what's the best way to make this chart. You know what? Let's do it like this. I have an idea. Times of the days. I'm going to go from right to left because we're in doing it from Hebrew. Okay, +1 here like this, and I'll go like that. Okay, very good. So here are the 12 hours of the day. Okay, and at this point is sunrise, and over here is sunset. You're with me so far? Okay, so far so good. Now let me just insert one more time period over here. And I'm going to call this 10.75. And this is going to be called Plag HaMincha. Okay? And now, you guys with me? This is what I'm going to try to do this. According to, here's how we're going to do this. Shacharit. Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbis. What is the time for Shacharit according to Rabbi Yehuda? These 4. What is it according to the rabbis? These 6. Okay? I'm trying to give you different colors. Itai, what color? Orange. Orange, again, you need to have some contrast. Okay? So this is Shacharit. Everyone with me? You see what I'm trying to show here? You see this chart? We could probably make this a little bit nicer. Afterwards, we'll clean this up. Okay, fine. Now, let's talk about Mincha. When are you allowed to pray Mincha according to... Now, I'm going to tell you that everyone agrees that the earliest time to pray Mincha is from 6.5. Okay? This is called the period of Mincha Gedolah. So the start time is here. Now what I want to do is I want to have Rabbi Yehuda and rabbis. You guys tell me, what should I highlight green? I'm going to tell you it's going to start here, and the orange is going to start here. So you tell me, what should I highlight for Rabbi Yehuda? Until the 10.75 points. Okay? This is when Rabbi Yehuda says you can pray Mincha. What about rabbis? All the way through. Okay? So far, so good. And now let's do this. Let's do this. Arvit. According to Rabbi Yehuda and rabbis. What am I making green according to Rabbi Yehuda? Sorry? Itai got it. The answer is this. When can you start praying Arvit? When you're done with Mincha, which is over here. And according to the rabbis, when can you start praying Arvit? After sunset. Okay? So now, here's the issue. The issue is, what happens after Plag HaMincha before sunset? According to Rabbi Yehuda, after Plag HaMincha and sunset is Arvit time. According to rabbis, after Plag HaMincha until sunset is still Mincha time. So if I tell you I want you to be strict, what am I really telling you to do? What I'm telling you to do is block this out. No prayers during that time. Because if you want to be strict, you cannot pray after Plag HaMincha. Because what am I going to do after Plag HaMincha? Pray Mincha? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's too late. According to the rabbis, you can pray Mincha, but you can't if you want to be strict. So what you're going to do? Pray Arvit? According to Chachamim, it's too early. So if you want to be strict, that hour and a quarter before sunset, don't pray. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's Arvit time. According to Rabbanan, it's Mincha time. You guys with me? Now I got to pull up a Masechet Zmaniot. Okay, I see a nod from you, Nick. Let's look at this on the calendar. This is today's calendar. You with me? What time is the earliest Mincha? This is what I said. Mincha Gedolah is at 1:26. What time is sunset? 7:25. What time is Plag HaMincha? 6:03. What are you allowed to do? Tell me, and there's two opinions. What are you allowed to do between 6:03 and 7:25 today? According to Rabbi Yehuda, Arvit, because Mincha goes until Plag HaMincha, until 6:03. According to Rabbi Yehuda, at 6:03, Mincha time is over, now it's Arvit time. And what about the rabbis? What do you do between 6:03 and 7:25? Still Mincha, because Arvit only starts at 7:25. So in this case, any being strict is actually being lenient. Because if I tell you, oh, I'm going to hold like Rabbi Yehuda, and so what does that mean? You want to be strict like according to Rabbi Yehuda? During this time you're praying Mincha, the rabbis are saying you can't. So it's not being strict. So, okay, I'm going to be strict like the rabbis. You want to be strict like the rabbis, you're going to pray Mincha before sunset. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't. So you have to be strict by not praying at all. Imagine that being the solution. No prayers for an hour and a quarter. You know what's going to end up happening? People aren't going to pray. Imagine if I told you Mincha on Fridays from now on, whatever time candlelighting is, an hour and a half before candlelighting. If I do at candlelighting instead of 5 minutes after candlelighting, people complain. If you have Mincha, it has to be like after candlelighting. If you do 5 minutes before candlelighting, you get complaints until next week. The 10 minutes that they would have wanted to start earlier, they're going to be complaining about. Imagine if you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to pray Mincha before candlelighting. You have to pray Mincha an hour and a quarter before candlelighting, before sunset. So this stringency is actually going to end up being a problem because people are not going to be praying. Are you following? What is the ramification of not praying between Plag and sunset? Is that if you want to be strict, you're not going to be able to pray anything during that time. So what does the Gemara tell us the law is? What's the law? Okay. So let's clarify. It doesn't say whatever is convenient for you. It says the avad kemor avad. If you want to follow this opinion, you can. Or one who follows this opinion is not incorrect, is correct. And if one wants to follow that opinion, they can. Okay. Now, let me tell you what Shulchan Aruch says, and I'm going to show it to you. Shulchan Aruch is basically saying you get to choose, but guess what? You choose once in your life. You can choose if you want to be an early Mincha type of guy, praying, taking Shabbat in early, and then you get to have dinner with your kids and go to sleep. Or if you want to be, I'm going to pray Arvit after sunset, so that means I could pray Mincha during this Plag time. But you have to pick a team. You have to go to the Great Neck voting house, and you have to register. I'm a Rabbi Yehuda type of guy, blue, or orange and green. We're not going to do blue and red. That's politics. You have to vote, or you have to register which one you want to do. This is what Shulchan Aruch is going to say. Okay, but he gives us an exception. He says unless there's extenuating circumstances. And those words of unless there's extenuating circumstances, you can leave it to the Jewish people, Am Yisrael, Asherecha Kol Yisrael. They can say all sorts of things. Look, if you don't do this, then they're not going to end up praying. So normally you have to do this, but if you don't do this over here for Erev Shabbat, people aren't going to go pray. People are not going to have minyan. So in order to do minyan, we're going to end up doing it. Okay? But then the Mishnah Berurah takes it a step further, and I'm going to show you all of this, and I'll come to your question in a second. The hierarchy is like this. We wanted to know between Plag and sunset, is that Mincha time like Rabbanan, or is it Arvit time like Rabbi Yehuda? The Gemara says you pick. Shulchan Aruch says you pick once, unless it's a situation. But normally you pick once. And then says the Mishnah Berurah, and even if you're going to start changing, fine, but you can't change the same day. Like what you absolutely cannot do is have Mincha at 6:30. And Arvit at 7. There's no way, because now during that time period is either like Rabbi Yehuda or like the rabbis, but you can't say Mincha at 6:30 and Arvit at 7, because like, are you picking like, if you're doing Mincha at 6:30, you hold like the rabbis, and then you're going to hold like the Rabbanan 5 minutes later pray Arvit, which means if you want to pick and choose every day for whatever reason, at least you need to be internally consistent. And if that time has become you pray Mincha during that time, you follow the rabbis, which means you got to wait until sunset. And if you want to pray Arvit during that time, so your Mincha has to be before Plag. Okay? This is what Mishnah Berurah says, but even he throws in one more thing. Okay? But he says, and this is if you're praying alone. But if you're praying with a minyan, now what's going to happen? People are not going to come back. It's okay. It's fine, which is really why this is what we do. We do this all year round, and I'm going to show this to you right now. But I want to be clear on what exactly we're doing. Okay? So Ita, you had a question? You want to ask it?
I mentioned, let's say you're a good guy, didn't pray Mincha. It's Plag, and you didn't have enough time, or whatever, you for something, for whatever reason,
Okay.
and there's a Rabbanan minyan that the folks, you pray Mincha with that?
Okay. So first, let's say, what would a Rabbi Yehuda guy do in your situation? You're like Rabbi Yehuda, which means the end of Mincha is a Plag HaMincha. Plag HaMincha to end it. What would you do if you're a Rabbi Yehuda guy? That's it. You miss Mincha. You pray Arvit twice. Okay? So now, what you're saying is, but the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is the avad kamar avad, the avad kamar avad. So then, in that situation, look, there's an extenuating circumstances. So in this situation, Shulchan Aruch is going to say, it's not wrong to hold like Rabbanan. It's just like you shouldn't change. But in this situation, you missed it. So you could still pray Mincha like the rabbis. Okay? That's what you do in this situation. But I want to now show you the flow of all of the halachot. Are you guys with me? You're going to go to Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Siman 233. Resh Lamed Gimel. 233. Here we go. This is amazing. Amazing halacha. Everyone with me? Let's go. מי שהתפלל תפילת המנחה לאחר 6 שעות ומחצה ולמעלה יצא. If someone decides they want to pray mincha from 6.5 hours into the day, early mincha, like mincha gedolah, you fulfill your obligation. ועיקר זמנה מ9 שעות ומחצה ולמעלה. But Shulchan Aruch says, really, ideally, the ideal time to pray mincha is from 9.5 hours into the of the day and on. So, like, let me just show you. I really need to clean this up a little bit. But what Shulchan Aruch is telling us is that, yeah, you could start praying mincha at this time, but really this is the time to start. So I'm gonna dark green this, boom, like that's the real time, or let's dark orange this. Yes, because actually this is according to the opinion of the Rambam. But this is what Shulchan Aruch is telling us, that ideally it's better not to pray early mincha. It's better to pray mincha toward the end of the day, because they would bring the korbanot toward the end of the day. Even though they could technically bring it from 6.5 hours from mincha gedolah, they would bring it later. So that's the ideal. Okay, so this is what Shulchan Aruch says. If you do it earlier, it's fine. You did it, it's fine. But it's better to do it later. Now,
Is there a name for that 9.5 hour?
yeah, Mincha Ketana. It's called Mincha Ketana. Mincha Gedolah, Mincha Ketana. And then now he's telling us the end time. You ready? What does he say is the end time for Mincha? Says Shulchan Aruch, Ad Halayla, until the evening. Ooh. So, Shishod. You know what? Don't highlight things. Every time I try to highlight things. Okay, Ad Halayla, until the evening. The Rabbanan, according to the rabbis. You could pray Mincha until the evening, according to the rabbis. So look at this chart. Until the rabbis, you could go until the end of the 12th hour. Uli Rabbi Yehuda ad Plag HaMincha. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only until the end of the Plag HaMincha, Shehu ad Sof. That is until the end of Yud Aleph, which is 11 Shaot, 11 hours, Chaser Ravia, minus a quarter. So that means 11 minus a quarter, which is 10.75. Okay? Now, very important comment, side comment by the Rama, which you all should know really well. Haga, umisha'arinan, sha'ot elu, we calculate these hours, lefi inyan ha'om, depending on the season. Ve'af im hayom aroch, and even if the day is very long, misha'arinan leyud bet sha'ot, that long day still has 12 hours. So here he's talking about that concept of that we call Shaot Zmaniot. Fine. Okay, and he says, V'hem nikraim Shaot Zmaniot, and they are called Shaot Zmaniot. Okay, let's go. Is the law like Rabbi Yehuda or like the rabbi says, Shulchan Aruch, Ve'asikna de'avad ka'amar avad, ve'avad ka'amar avad. And we concluded that if you follow this opinion, it's okay, and if you follow that opinion, it's okay. But now it says Shulchan Aruch, are you ready? He's adding this line. Ve'hu she'ya'aseh le'olam kechad minayu. As long as you do always like one of them, you need to subscribe to one opinion. If you want to be like the rabbis and pray mincha until sunset, then don't pray mincha, don't pray arvit from Plag HaMincha, then you're a Rabbanan guy. Arvit only starts after sunset. And if you want to hold like Rabbi Yehuda, you want to start praying arvit from Plag HaMincha, don't pray mincha that time. And now the custom is everyone prays Arvit, prays Mincha until sunset. So don't pray Arvit before sunset. Why? Because we've all adopted the opinion of the rabbis. But in a situation that you did, it's fine. Why? Like this is like Itai's question. Once in a while, these things happen. It's fine. Now says the kicker line from Shulchan Aruch. And during times of extenuating circumstances, Sha'at HaDechak means pressing times. You can pray Arvit early. Even though I'm telling you that we should pray Arvit only afterwards, because we're praying Mincha until sunset, like we hold like the rabbis, during difficult situations, it's okay if you want to pray early. Now I want to show you what Mishnah Berurah says. Mishnah Berurah tells us two critical statements. Statement number one that he says. Here we go. Okay, fine. So he's saying you either hold like this opinion, that opinion, and he speaks to what I was saying. He's like, this one is strict, but it means lenient for this, and this one is lenient, is strict for that. He says that whole thing, and then he says here, Le'olam kechad, you should always hold like one opinion. Shelo yinhog pa'am kach or pa'am kach. Don't say I'm going to hold like this one day, like that one day. Mishum dehave tarti desatre, because you're internally inconsistent. And even if you're saying, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow," it doesn't matter. If you want to hold this way, hold this way. Don't change your opinions. And you should never pray mincha after sunset, after plag, and Arvit before sunset. You should never have a situation where during that time period between Plag and Arvit, you're doing both. Because no one says you could do both. You could either do Mincha according to the rabbis or Arvit according to Rabbi Yehuda, but you can't do both. And now says, let me find it to you. And during extenuating circumstances, even if typically you're praying mincha after plag, meaning like the rabbis. you would be allowed to pray Arvit during this time, and during a difficult situation. But he says, and that leniency doesn't mean you could do both in the same day. It just means that you could switch from day to day. But to do both in the same day, you can't do that. אבל באותו היום גופה התפלל מנחה אחר פלאג, שוב אסור לו להתפלל ערבית קודם הלילה. You can, if you prayed mincha during that time, you cannot pray ערבית in that time. Here's the line, בכל זה, all of this, אם יתפלל ביחידי. If you're praying alone, on your own. אבל ציבור, שיתפללו מנחה, but a tzibur, a minyan, that they prayed mincha during that time. ושילכו לביתם, and now they're going to go to their houses. It's going to be very difficult for them to come back. L'tfilat erev for Arvit, v'itbatel tfilat sibur legamre, and they're not going to come back. Hekilu acharonim, the rabbis permitted it. Shemutar l'itbalel Arvit samuch lamincha, they allow it. So now what we're saying is, let's say today, what time is Plag today? We said 6:30. Okay, 6:23. No, sorry. That's the night. 6:03. Let's say there's a Mincha Arvit Minyan at 6:30. Okay? What does that mean? I want you to think about this in the context of the schedule. If you have a Mincha Arvit Minyan at 6:30, what does that mean? That means you're going to pray Mincha like the rabbis. But you're going to, it's Mincha Arvit, which means you're going to be praying Arvit at 6:20. That's like Rabbi Yehuda. So you're doing Tarti Satri. That means two things that are contradicting each other. You're internally inconsistent. So really, you shouldn't do that. But Mishnah Berurah is telling us that if it's a situation that's by after Mincha saying, all right, guys, come back at 7:25. And what's going to happen? No one's going to show up. So what do? Do you just abolish the minyan, or do you just say, okay, you just do it? Now, let me ask you this, Mr. Hakimian, the Gabay Harashi. We come to you and we say, Mr. Hakimian, we want to know, we can set mincha time to be whatever time we want to do it. You choose. What time would you pick? Whatever time you say, people are going to come, but here's my request. I want it to be mincha arvit. I need to have both. You tell me what time to come. What time should we come? What would you say? Okay, so you could say after Plag, but what time after Plag? Now let's think this through. What you have to think through is, I also want to make sure that Arvit and Mincha, if ideally I could pick any time, I don't want Mincha and Arvit to be during the same time period. So there's two ways for me to deal with this. Okay? What's one way? You could do Mincha after Plag with the intention of doing Arvit after sunset, after Shkia. So if you ask me, I say sunset is at 7:25. 7:10 is Mincha. If I say 7:10 Mincha, what am I accomplishing? Mincha is after Plag before sunset, like the rabbis. And if I say 7:10 Mincha, that means 7:25 is when I'm going to start Arvit. That's after sunset, like the rabbis. So in that prayer, I'm holding like the rabbis. So there's no internal inconsistency. I have one other solution. What could be another solution? Yes? Boom! 5:45 Mincha. Because what happens by praying Mincha at 5:45? I'm praying Mincha before Plag, like Rabbi Yehuda, and I'm going to pray Arvit after Plag. And then, that's 5:45. And then, if you're Rabbi Adam Sabzavari, that wants to force people to sit in his shiur, and that they're going to be held, chained, that they can't go anywhere, I'm going to say 5:40. And then we're going to finish Mincha at 5:55, and I'm going to say, well, I have an 8-minute Dvar Torah to give you guys. And then I'm going to turn that 8-minute Dvar Torah into 10 minutes. I'm going to tell you whatever I want, which is something that very often what they'll do is whenever they want to have an early thing, but Plag HaMincha is very late, start early, and then you could give a Pirkei Avot in the middle or something like that. What is the latest time Plag HaMincha is? Let's go with let's just go with August, or yeah. It's going to be usually July. Here, the earliest I could do is August 3rd. No, it should be even earlier than that. 6:38. 6:40. No, I think it's even later, isn't it? Whatever it is. What's the latest day of the year?
I think like June 23rd, the days of
Okay, just go with June 23rd. Apply. Let's see. I need a paid subscription. Sorry, I can't do it for you. Okay, whatever. But you get the point that there will be a time where you need to really be comfortable with the plag time. And as Mr. Hakimian said, you could say, I want to do mincha after this time. But if you have the option of doing mincha during the time between plag and before sunset, and doing arvit after sunset, that's the best. And let's say it doesn't work. Let's say everyone is going to go catch a train. So they do this sometimes in the city. They have a certain thing, and then people go have to catch the train. No matter what, they want to catch I don't know the times of the trains. They want to catch the 606 train. So you have to do it at this time, otherwise you're not going to do it. You see, according to the Mishnah Berurah, he quotes that even in a situation where you're going to do mincha and arvit during the same time period, if it's a minyan, we allow it. It's not ideal, but we allow it. Now, here's what's wrong. I'll tell you what's wrong. Let's say Plag HaMincha is at 7 o'clock or 6:30, and there's a minyan that says every day of the year, Mincha Arvit 5 p.m. Every day of the year, 5 p.m., we're going to do Mincha Arvit. So Mincha at 5, 5:15, Arvit. No, this is our minhag. No, it's not your minhag. Minhag, otiyot, geinam. Just because it's your minhag doesn't mean you could do it. You cannot pray Arvit before Plag HaMincha, ever. You can't do that. There's a whole big discussion with the Trumat Hadeshen, where he speaks about in the European countries where sunset is at like 11 o'clock at night. Like people can't handle it. So he would say, you could pray Arvit early. Rabbi Chaim says, no, you can't. So what do? Either you stay up, and if you can't, so you can't. But you can't pray Arvit before Plag HaMincha. There's no opinion that allows that. So here are the critical things you need to keep in mind. Yeah.
Start only a few minutes before Plag. Based on when you start, or if you go into that time, is that you run into like contradicting?
Okay, excellent question. Ben, you're asking the right question of like these, we're talking about moments here, like moments before, moments after. Like, what is the key point? Is the key point like I need to finish mincha before plag, or I need to finish mincha before sunset, or do I just need to start? And if I start, like the doors were open, I'm in, I don't have to finish. I just have to get onto the plane. I just have to get on the train. So the answer is, ideally, you need to be finished. But as long as you start, you're okay. This is what the halacha is, that as long as you start and you say, that's it. Baruch, you started. Once you started, you're no one's gonna bother you at that point and go, but you consider like you're praying during the daytime. But yeah, you should time it out beforehand. That's why it's very important. Sometimes when they're setting up the times for mincha and arvit, it's just what people do based on convenience. People say, oh, this is a good time because I need to catch this train. Okay, I understand that. But there's halachot involved here. There's halachot. There's sensitivities. You can't just do whatever you want whenever you want. There's Plag HaMincha. Arvit cannot be before Plag HaMincha. Mincha cannot be after sunset. So Mincha has to be before sunset for sure. And Arvit has to be after Plag for sure. Now, during that time, it's really best not to do both. So either plan to do Mincha a few minutes before Plag, or a few minutes before sunset. But in a situation where you've exhausted all your options and you can't do it, so you can't do it, but at least you should be aware of these times. Very important halachot. Very important halachot for the entire schedule of times. Yes?
Still off topic, can you apply this Shah and Chag to, let's say, a different halacha where there's different, let's say, like, waiting between meat and dairy?
Uh-huh.
Say you're on a business trip, you wait 6 hours, and the store that closes in 10 minutes, and you wait 6 hours versus 3 hours, and technically, there's people that wait 3 hours.
I love it. I love it. This is by the way, I don't know if you realize it, but this is the second time someone asked this question tonight. Okay? Different words, same question. What was it? Dylan's question. Dylan's question said, oh, you gave me an example by an aguna that we accept one witness. So can I take that law and apply it by other situations that only accept one witness? Now, what Itai is saying is like there's two opinions. So really what we're going to say is you have to pick one, but Shaot Zmaniot, you can finagle and you can do both. Can you apply that to other situations? The answer is, welcome to the system of halacha. There are going to be situations where yes, there's going to be situations that not. But what's unique about this and that's why it makes it very unique, is that the Gemara doesn't conclude which one, and the Gemara says you can pick. So when the Gemara says the avad kamor avad, the avad kamor avad, that says you could pick this one or pick that one, there's clearly nothing here is wrong. So that's why in situations of extenuating circumstances we're being lenient. But if the Gemara comes and says this is the halacha, can you now change Shaot Zmaniot? Not so fast. In a situation with meat and dairy and 6 hours, it's going to depend on. Well, that's the second time you asked that question. Also, who asked that? Yeah, you brought it up. That came up in another context. Yeah, so there are situations in which a person can cut that short. There are situations. I'll give you an example. Situation is a pregnant woman, where halakha speaks very strongly about a craving that a pregnant woman has. What's it called in Farsi?
VR.
VR, right? So VR stands for virtual reality, or it's for when a pregnant woman wants to eat something. It's not virtual, it's very real. So in that's what halakha says, is that it's important. So let's say she just had meat, and then 5 minutes later she says, I need to have some chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream right now. She looks at her husband, she says, if you don't give this to me, Sham te keburatchem, we're going to say Kaddish for you. So what do? Then you run for your life because she's going to kill you if not. But even if maybe she's not going to kill you, still in situations like that, there's considerations. Why? Because this is not something that's deoraita. Waiting between meat and dairy is the rabbinic, and there's a source of how you get there. So yes, there is times where you consider this concept, but that's not a blanket statement. That doesn't mean that anytime you have a situation you could say, I'm going to use this leniency. Okay? Very good. So let's just quickly recap. What is the latest time to pray Mincha? Machloket. Very good. What is that? No, okay, give me a little bit more than that. Rabbi Yehuda says Plag HaMincha. Rabbanan say Shikia. What is Plag HaMincha? 10.75 hours into the day, or 1 hour and 15 minutes, or not really 15, 1 hour and a quarter. It could be more than 15 minutes. An hour and a quarter before sunset, which ends up at the same point. That is the latest time of Mincha, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to the rabbis, is at sunset. And what's the earliest time to pray Arvit? Okay. Very good. It's actually the same time. The earliest time to pray Arvit is Plag HaMincha, according to Rabbi Yehuda, which is the latest time to pray Mincha. And according to the rabbis, what's the earliest time to pray Arvit? Sunset. Okay. Now, what's the halacha like? Yeah, you pick. The Gemara said, Rav Chasta asked the question, they didn't give him an answer. And there's different shuls do different things. And what we said is you pick. And when we said you pick, there's different levels of that. Shulchan Aruch says you pick once in your life, and that's what you hold like. But extenuating circumstances you could change. And Mishnah Berurah says you could change, but not on the same day. And then he says, but that's for an individual. For a minyan, it will even be lenient in that situation. Yes.
Just said that it is like a mincha, but you also say that if you do Arvit earlier, if you do mincha and Arvit after each other. So if somebody had mincha at 1:30, and then after the plan, do we need to want to say Arvit again?
Oh, okay. Wow, few levels to this question. Very important. You said something here which I didn't say that way, but that's exactly correct. We say that you could do Arvit early when you do Mincha Arvit together, right? Now, why is that the case? Because of what the Mishnah Berurah's logic was. Mishnah Berurah's logic was, if you already gathered a minyan for Mincha, and everyone is there, and then you're going to send them home and tell them to come back, they're never going to come back. So then, it's okay to do Arvit. So that's why they say, if you do Mincha Arvit, you can pray Arvit early, okay? But now your question is, but what if I'm praying Mincha at 2 p.m., can I pray it early then? I'm not doing Mincha Arvit. The answer is, yes, you can. Why? Because you hold like Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we're actually not being any lenient. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Mincha is until Plag, Arvit is after Plag. So in a situation where a person is praying Mincha at 2 p.m., he's praying Mincha before Plag. Today he's holding like Rabbi Yehuda. And that means you want to pray Arvit, you could pray Arvit after Plag already. So it's not the case that you have to do Mincha Arvit Minyan. if you pray Mincha early, you could pray Arvit before Plag. After Plag, you could join. But right, does that make sense? Let's say it one more time. Mr. Akimian asked a very good question. He said, we're giving you a leniency of doing during that. Guys, give me a name for this. What do you want to call the time period between Plag and Arvit? Let's call it something. Like the Bermuda Triangle. Okay? No, it's not Ben Hashmashot is afterwards. Ben Azmanim. Ben Azmanim is the time when the school is closed. No. Okay. What? The Bermuda Zman. Okay, I'll go with the Bermuda Zman. The Bermuda Zman is the time between Plag HaMincha and sunset. The Bermuda Zman, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's Arvit time. According to Rabbi Rabbanan, that's Mincha time. If you're going to pick one or the other, you can't do both in that time. You can't do both in that Bermuda Zman. But Mishnah Berurah quotes this leniency, even though he doesn't hold he doesn't say you should do this. But he tells us this leniency that if you already gathered people to pray Mincha during that Bermuda Zman, then you can let them pray Arvit also. Because if you're going to send them home, they're not going to come back. Fine? Fine. Now, so what that turns out being is that you can have a Mincha Mariv Minyan during that Bermuda Zman. That's how we arrived at it. So now Mr. Akimian asked a question. In my office, I had Mincha at 1 o'clock. At 1:30, we had Mincha. Now I know there's a Bermuda Zman Minyan over there where they're doing Mincha Arvit, but I'm not praying Mincha. I'm going to show up for Arvit. Am I allowed to do that? Yeah. So the answer is yes, because you don't have any internal inconsistency. You actually are being very consistent. Mincha before Plag, Arvit after Plag. You hold like Rabbi Yehuda. And that's why it's not a problem. It actually works much better this way. It works much better not to do both in the middle. Do one earlier and then do the other one in between. So actually, you are, even though you are only an Arvit guy for that day, you're allowed to pray Arvit only in a Bermuda Zman. Why? Because that really means that you're better off than everyone else. Everyone else is doing this internal inconsistency that you're relying on a leniency of a leniency. But you hold like Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara says you could hold like, if you're being consistent, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing at all. So actually what you're doing is high level, what you're doing. Good? Question? According to Rabbi Yehuda, you wouldn't be able to pray Mincha. Yes, but we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. We hold like sometimes like the rabbis. And that would be enough of a circumstance to hold like the rabbis in that situation if you missed it. That's considered an extenuating circumstance because you missed it. Yes.
If someone's praying Arvit when everyone else is praying Mincha, what if like you're the 10th person? Is that a problem?
Okay, no.
You're praying like part of the.
Okay, very good. So that is something I did not discuss at all. I did not discuss of you praying one thing while everyone else is praying something else. What I discussed is you're joining the Bermuda Zman Mincha Arvit Minyan and you're praying Arvit with them. But you're not, no. You're not praying Arvit while they're praying Mincha. You're praying Arvit during the time of Arvit in that Bermuda Zman Minyan, right? So then it works because while you're praying Arvit after Plag, you prayed Mincha before Plag, so it works. You're asking a very interesting question of, there is this Minyan here, and now, this, you know where this happens? This happens all the time at weddings. You go to a wedding, in this corner they're praying Mincha, they're praying Arvit, and all of a sudden you just join. In the middle of joining, all of a sudden I realize, I'm praying Mincha's Arvit Minyan. And then all of a sudden I see, they say, Hishem Hashem, and then all of a sudden they go into, I just realized I'm praying Mincha, this is an Arvit Minyan. I didn't know. I see them going like this. I just come in and I go like this. Arvit is Mincha. Okay, now in the situation I'm saying it happened. But the question is, should you do that? Very good question. Very good question. No, you can't join a minyan for a different prayer. You can't join a minyan for a different prayer. But this could get very creative, the type of situations that you have. They need me for a 10th person. Okay, very good question.
Wait, what if you're the only one who knows that you prayed differently? Everyone thinks you prayed the same thing as them.
Oh yeah, you don't have to break it to them. Say, by the way, you all did no minyan tonight. Sorry. No, whatever. It happens. Chabula. It's better that you keep your secret. Don't tell anyone. Go tell your wife and don't tell anyone else. It's okay. No one needs to hear about it. But yeah, no. But this question comes up all the time: is if I'm praying shacharit, or another thing. This happens all the time. Someone comes late to Kenis on Shabbat, and they're up to Musaf, and I didn't pray shacharit yet. And can I like do Amidah of shacharit while they're doing Musaf? People ask me this question all the time. No, the answer is you should pray Musaf. You should pray shacharit first. And if you're like with the Musaf Minyan and you want to pray with the Musaf Minyan, you pray Musaf right now. You don't pray Shacharit while they're praying Musaf. It's if you don't have to be. The Tzibur, the prayer with the Tzibur goes together with the Tzibur. It's not a different prayer. But it's excellent questions and very good stuff. Okay, Azak Baruch everyone. Have a good night. Bezrat Hashem. See you next time.